The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It drummed against the tin roof of the orphanage kitchen where I worked, a relentless rhythm that matched the ache in my lower back. My hands were raw from scrubbing pots in cold water. The boiler had broken again, and no one cared enough to fix it. Not for a place like this, not for the forgotten. I wiped my forehead with the back of my wrist, leaving a streak of soap across my skin, and glanced through the narrow window. Beyond the fogged glass, the compound stretched dark and unwelcoming. This wasn't an orphanage in the human sense. Not entirely. It was a holding place, a gray zone where children who didn't fit anywhere else ended up. The offspring of failed bonds, of rogues, of unions that broke every sacred law the packs held dear. Half-bloods, abandoned pups, the children everyone pretended didn't exist. And I was here because I had nowhere else to go either. My hair, pale as winter wheat, was tied back in a braid that had come loose hours ago. Strands stuck to my neck, damp with steam and sweat. I'd stopped caring about my appearance months ago. What was the point? I was human. Plain, unremarkable, and entirely invisible in a world that revered strength, dominance, and the primal bond between alphas and omegas. I had none of those things. I was just here. Miss Iris? The small voice made me turn. Standing in the doorway was Tomas, one of the youngest. He couldn't have been more than 5, with matted dark hair and eyes too large for his gaunt face. The other children avoided him. He'd been born to a rogue mother who'd died in childbirth, and his father, whoever he was, had never claimed him. The staff whispered that he carried bad blood, that he'd grow up unstable, dangerous. I saw only a frightened child. Hey, sweetheart. I dried my hands on my apron and crouched down to his level. Can't sleep? He shook his head, clutching a threadbare blanket. The others. They said I'm not supposed to eat tomorrow. They said there's not enough. My jaw tightened. It wasn't the first time I'd heard this. The orphanage received funding from the Crown, from the Alpha King's royal treasury, but somehow the money never stretched far enough. Or perhaps it did, and the staff simply pocketed the difference. I'd learned not to ask questions. Questions got you dismissed, and I needed this job. I had no family, no pack, no bond to protect me, but I couldn't let a child go hungry. Come here. I stood and walked to the pantry, a cramped closet that smelled of flour and mouse droppings. Hidden behind a sack of dried beans was my own small stash. Bread I'd bought with my meager wages, a jar of honey, some preserved fruit. I'd been saving it for emergencies, for days when my own stomach cramped with hunger. This qualified. I made Tomas a small sandwich, spreading the honey thick, and watched as his eyes went wide. Don't tell the others, I whispered, pressing it into his small hands. And eat it slow, okay? Make it last. He nodded solemnly, then surprised me by throwing his thin arms around my waist. Thank you, Miss Iris. Something cracked open inside my chest. Something tender and painful all at once. I hugged him back, breathing in the scent of unwashed hair and innocence. Anytime, sweetheart. You're not alone. He scurried away, sandwich clutched like treasure, and I returned to the dishes. My hands trembled slightly. I'd just given away food I couldn't afford to replace. But what else could I do? Turn away from a child's hunger because I was afraid of my own. I thought of my mother sometimes, though the memories were hazy. She'd died when I was 12, a fever that no healer could break. Before she passed, she'd held my hand and told me something I'd never forgotten. Kindness isn't weakness, Iris. It's the hardest kind of strength. I wasn't sure I believed that anymore. Kindness had gotten me nowhere. It had left me here, in this cold kitchen, with nothing to my name but exhaustion and a foolish heart that couldn't stop caring. Outside, the rain intensified. Thunder growled low across the sky. And then I heard it, the sound of vehicles approaching, heavy engines, multiple trucks. My stomach dropped. We weren't expecting any deliveries. The orphanage was located on the outskirts of the capital, tucked away where polite society didn't have to look at it. No one came here unless they had to. I moved to the window, peering through the darkness. Headlights cut through the rain, illuminating the compound's iron gates. The vehicles were sleek, black, official. My pulse quickened. The Royal Guard. Panic fluttered in my throat. Had someone reported me? Had they discovered I was supplementing the children's meals with my own funds, circumventing the official rations? Was that even a crime? The front door of the main building slammed open. I heard Matron Voss's shrill voice, suddenly syrupy and obsequious. "Your Highness, we weren't informed of your visit. Please, come in, we're honored." Your Highness? My breath caught. The Alpha King himself? Here? I pressed closer to the window, my heart hammering. Through the rain-blurred glass, I saw figures emerging from the vehicles, guards in dark uniforms, their postures rigid and alert, and then, stepping from the central car, a man. Even from this distance, even through the storm, his presence was undeniable. He was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the lethal grace of a born predator. Dark hair, slicked back from the rain. His face was all sharp angles and controlled power, the kind of face that made lesser beings instinctively lower their eyes. An alpha in every sense, dominant, commanding, dangerous. King Demon Cross, ruler of the Northern Territories, the most powerful alpha in 3 generations. I'd seen his picture in newspapers, heard the stories. He was ruthless in politics, undefeated in combat, and utterly without mercy for those who threatened his people. Unmated, despite the hundreds of eligible Omegas who'd been paraded before him over the years. Rumor said he'd executed the last woman who'd tried to trap him with a false bond claim. And he was here, at this forgotten orphanage, in the middle of the night. Why? I watched as he spoke briefly to Matron Voss, his expression unreadable. She was practically bowing, gesturing frantically toward the main dormitory. The king didn't seem interested in whatever she was saying. Instead, his gaze swept the compound, methodical, assessing. And then, impossibly, his eyes locked onto the kitchen window, onto me. I jerked back from the glass, my heart in my throat. He couldn't have seen me. It was dark inside, the window fogged. He was too far away, but I felt it. That weight of attention, heavy and absolute, like being pinned beneath a wolf's stare. I forced myself to breathe, to move away from the window. This had nothing to do with me. He was probably conducting some random inspection, making sure the Crown's funds were being used properly. He'd never even know I existed. I turned back to the sink, plunging my hands into the cold, soapy water. Focus. Finish the dishes. Stay invisible. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, I couldn't tell. The sounds from outside faded. The vehicles didn't leave, but the voices quieted. I scrubbed at a particularly stubborn pot, trying to ground myself in the familiar rhythm of work. Then the kitchen door opened. I spun around, nearly dropping the pot. He stood in the doorway, King Demon Cross, in my kitchen. Up close, he was overwhelming. Taller than I'd realized, his frame filling the narrow space. His scent hit me like a physical force, pine and smoke and something wild. Something that made my hindbrain scream both danger and safety in the same breath. His eyes, storm gray and penetrating, fixed on me with an intensity that made my knees weak. "You're the one feeding them." His voice was low, a dark rumble that vibrated in my chest. Not a question. A statement. My mouth went dry. I don't know what you mean, Your Highness." A muscle ticked in his jaw. He stepped inside, and the kitchen somehow became smaller, the air thicker. "Don't lie to me." Fear spiked through me, but beneath it, something else stirred. A strange, defiant spark. I'd done nothing wrong. "I gave a hungry child some bread," I said quietly. "If that's a crime, then I'm guilty." His eyes narrowed. For a long moment, he said nothing, just studied me with that unnerving focus. I felt stripped bare under his gaze, as if he could see every secret, every scar, every sleepless night. "What's your name?" "Iris Hayden, Your Highness, human." Another statement, not a question. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Something flickered in his expression, surprise, maybe, or calculation. "And you work here voluntarily?" "I need the wages." The truth slipped out before I could stop it. "I have nowhere else to go." His jaw tightened. He glanced around the kitchen, taking in the cracked tiles, the ancient stove, the smell of damp and neglect. When his gaze returned to me, there was something dark burning in those gray eyes. "Show me," he said. "Show you what?" "Where the children sleep." My stomach twisted. If he saw the conditions, the overcrowded rooms, the broken heating, the way the staff segregated the problem children, heads would roll. Maybe mine among them, but I couldn't refuse the Alpha King. I dried my hands and led him through the narrow corridor, acutely aware of his presence behind me. He moved silently despite his size, a predator's stealth. We passed the staff quarters, empty, the cowards probably hiding, and approached the dormitory wing. I pushed open the door to the youngest children's room. The smell hit first. Unwashed bodies, sickness, fear. 20 small beds crammed into a space meant for 10. Thin blankets, some children sharing because there weren't enough. In the corner, I spotted Tomas, curled around his precious sandwich, fast asleep. I heard the king's sharp intake of breath. When I dared glance at him, his face had gone cold, not emotionless, but rather containing a rage so profound it turned to ice. His hands were clenched at his sides, knuckles white. "How long?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "I've been here 4 months. It was like this when I arrived. And the funding?" I hesitated. This was dangerous territory. I don't handle the finances, Your Highness." His eyes cut to me. "But you know." I swallowed hard. The children never seemed to have enough. Food, clothes, medicine. But I see the delivery trucks. I know supplies arrive. They just don't reach the children. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. King Demon turned and walked out, his movements rigid with controlled fury. I followed, my heart pounding. In the hallway, he pulled out a phone, pressed a single button. "Gather the entire staff now, and summon the royal auditor. I want every financial record from this facility for the past 5 years on my desk by morning." He ended the call and turned to me. For a moment, that glacial rage softened, just a fraction. "You'll testify," he said. "About what you've witnessed here." Terror and relief warred inside me. "They'll dismiss me. I'll have nothing. You'll have my protection." He stepped closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. And a new position. In the palace. My breath caught. Why? For the first time, something almost like a smile ghost across his lips, but it was a dark, dangerous thing. "Because you did what my own officials failed to do. You saw children suffering, and you acted. Even at cost to yourself." His eyes held mine, and I felt pinned, exposed, seen in a way I'd never been before. That's rare, and I don't let rare things slip away. Before I could respond, chaos erupted. The staff began filing in, their faces pale with terror. Matron Voss was among them, her earlier confidence shattered. The Alpha King turned to face them, and I saw what true power looked like. But as he began speaking, delivering judgment with cold precision, I felt his gaze return to me. Just for a moment, a glance that lingered, that carried a weight I didn't understand. And in that moment, standing in the hallway of a broken orphanage with the most powerful man in the kingdom looking at me like I was something worth protecting, I felt the first tremor of something that terrified me more than any punishment could. The feeling that my invisible life had just become devastatingly, dangerously visible. The palace was a different world. I'd been escorted there 3 days after that rain-soaked night, my few belongings packed into a single worn suitcase. The royal guard who'd driven me, a stern woman named Commander Steele, had said little during the journey, but her presence alone had been enough to keep me silent. I'd watched the landscape change through the car window, from the gray outskirts where the orphanage festered to the manicured grounds of the capital's heart, where ancient oak trees lined cobblestone streets and buildings gleamed with old money and older power. The palace itself was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Stone towers reached toward the sky, their peaks lost in morning mist. Gardens sprawled in geometric precision, fountains murmuring secrets to the wind. Inside, the corridors were wide enough to drive a truck through, with vaulted ceilings painted in frescoes depicting pack history. The first shift, the ancient wars, the coronation of the bloodline that had ruled for 3 centuries. I felt like a smudge on a masterpiece. My new quarters were in the East Wing, where the palace staff lived. The room was small but clean, with a real bed, fresh linens, and a window overlooking the rose gardens. It was more than I'd had in years. I should have been grateful. Instead, I felt like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. My position, as explained by the head of household, a severe woman named Mrs. Blackthorne, was special consultant to the Crown's Child Welfare Initiative. It sounded impressive. In reality, it meant I was to help restructure the orphanage system, identifying failures and proposing solutions. I'd work with the Royal Auditor's Office, testify at hearings, and assist in implementing new policies. It was important work, meaningful work, and I had no idea why the king had chosen me for it. I hadn't seen him since that night. He'd departed the orphanage shortly after decimating the staff with his cold fury, leaving a team of investigators to process the scene like it was a crime site. Because it was. Embezzlement, child neglect, falsified records. Matron Voss and 3 others had been arrested before dawn. The children were being relocated to temporary facilities, properly funded this time, under the king's personal oversight. I'd given my statement to a court official, signed documents I barely understood, and then found myself swept into this new existence with dizzying speed. Now, a week after my arrival, I sat in a conference room that smelled of beeswax and old books, surrounded by officials who looked at me like I was a curiosity. A human woman, pale-haired and unremarkable, sitting at a table with some of the kingdom's most powerful administrators. Miss Hayden, the royal auditor, a gray-haired alpha named Theron Grayson, peered at me over wire-rimmed glasses. You claim the children were receiving less than 30% of their allocated nutrition budget. Can you substantiate this? I opened the folder before me, notes I'd made during my months at the orphanage, dates and observations logged in my cramped handwriting. The delivery manifests show full shipments arriving weekly, but the meals I prepared never matched those quantities. Someone was intercepting the supplies before they reached the kitchen. I slid a paper across the table. This is a typical daily menu I was given to work with. Compare it to the Crown's nutritional standards for growing children. Theron studied the document, his expression darkening. This is appalling. It gets worse, I continued, my voice steadier now. This, at least, I could do, speak for those who had no voice. The children with behavioral issues, usually the ones with rogue heritage or mixed bloodlines, were given even less. Staff called it corrective rationing. A female beta across the table sucked in a sharp breath. That's barbaric. It's systematic, I corrected quietly. And it wasn't just one facility. I've reviewed the preliminary reports from the other orphanages. The patterns match. The room fell silent. These people had been managing the kingdom's welfare programs for years, and a human woman with 4 months of experience had uncovered what they'd missed, or ignored. Theron cleared his throat. Your observations will be invaluable to the reform process, Miss Hayden. Thank you. The meeting continued, but I barely heard it. My mind kept drifting to those children, to Tomas with his 2 large eyes, to all the others I'd left behind. Were they safe now? Were they being fed, held, told they mattered? When the meeting finally adjourned, I gathered my papers with trembling hands. Exhaustion pulled at me. I'd barely slept since arriving, my mind too wired, too aware of how precarious my position was. Miss Hayden. I turned. Commander Steele stood in the doorway, her military bearing unchanged. The king requests your presence in the South Garden. My heart stuttered. Now? Now! I followed her through the labyrinthine palace, my practical flats silent on marble floors. We passed guards who saluted Steele, servants who pressed themselves against walls to let us pass, courtiers who stared at me with undisguised curiosity. I kept my eyes forward, my breathing measured. The South Garden was less manicured than the others, with wild roses climbing stone walls and a fountain that had cracked with age, water trickling through the fissures in a gentle, broken song. Ancient willows provided shade, their branches swaying in the afternoon breeze. King Damon stood beside the fountain, hands clasped behind his back, staring at something I couldn't see. He wore dark trousers and a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars, evidence of battles I could only imagine. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. He looked tired, human, almost. Then he turned, and that illusion shattered. His eyes found mine with that same unnerving intensity, and I felt my body respond, pulse quickening, breath catching. It wasn't attraction, I told myself. It was fear, instinct, the natural response of prey to predator. Your Highness. I performed an awkward curtsy, something I'd been practicing but still couldn't get right. Don't. His voice was rough. I didn't ask you here for ceremony. I straightened, uncertain. Commander Steele had vanished, leaving us alone. The garden suddenly felt very small. He gestured to a stone bench beneath one of the willows. Sit. I sat. He didn't join me, instead remaining standing, pacing slightly. Energy radiated from him, restless, contained. The auditors found everything you said and more, he began, his tone clipped. 6 orphanages, all operating under the same corruption. Funds siphoned, children neglected, records falsified, 43 officials implicated. He stopped pacing, his jaw tight. In my own kingdom, under my watch. You couldn't have known. I should have. The words came out like a snarl. That's my failure. Those children suffered because I was too focused on border threats, political alliances, pack disputes. I forgot to look at what was happening in my own backyard. I didn't know what to say. This was the Alpha King, the most powerful man in the territories, and he was confessing failure to me. It felt wrong, dangerous. You did look, I said quietly. That's why you came that night. His eyes cut to me. I came because one of my younger cousins mentioned something, a rumor about conditions at the outer facilities. I thought it was exaggeration, pack politics. He laughed, but it was a bitter sound. I almost didn't investigate, but you did. Because I heard about a human woman feeding hungry children with her own money. He moved closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. That caught my attention, made me wonder what else I was missing. Heat crept up my neck. I only did what anyone would. No. He crouched before me, bringing his face level with mine. Up close, I could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes, the fine lines of stress around them. Most people would have looked away, told themselves it wasn't their problem. You didn't. Even knowing it would cost you, it didn't cost me anything. It cost you your safety net, your security. His gaze was piercing. Why? Because I knew what it felt like to be invisible. To be hungry, alone, convinced you didn't matter. Because I remembered my mother's words about kindness being strength. Because I couldn't not. I don't know, I whispered instead. He studied me for a long moment, and I felt something shift in the air between us, something that made my skin prickle with awareness. You're afraid of me, he observed. You're the Alpha King. That's not an answer. I swallowed hard. Yes, I'm afraid. Good. He stood abruptly. Fear means you're smart between us, means you understand the reality of this world. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt disappointed, which was absurd. The reform initiative will take months, he continued, his tone shifting to something more formal, more controlled. You'll work closely with the auditors, visit each facility, interview staff and children. It won't be easy. There will be resistance from those who benefit from the current system. I understand. You'll also need protection. He turned back to me. There have already been threats, anonymous but credible. People angry about the arrests, about the investigations. Fear spiked cold through my chest. Threats? Against those involved in exposing the corruption. Which includes you. His expression hardened. I'm assigning a personal guard. Commander Steele will coordinate your security detail. That's not necessary. It wasn't a request, Miss Hayden. The authority in his voice silenced me. This was the king speaking now, not the tired man confessing failures. There's something else, he said, his tone careful now. The spring summit begins next week. Every major pack leader in the kingdom will be here, along with foreign dignitaries. It's tradition, a display of unity, negotiation, alliance building. I nodded. unsure where this was going. You'll attend? My stomach dropped. Me? Why would I? I'm not Pack. I'm not. You're my guest. He held my gaze. And a symbol. A reminder that this kingdom protects all its people, not just those with rank and bloodline. It sounded noble. It felt like being used as a political prop. I don't have anything to wear to something like that, I said weakly. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. That will be arranged. Mrs. Blackthorne will assist you. Your Highness. Demon. I blinked. What? When we're alone, call me Demon. He moved closer again, and this time I couldn't look away from those storm-gray eyes. I'm tired of titles, of distance. You've seen things most people in this palace haven't. Real suffering, real corruption. You spoke truth when others stayed silent. His voice dropped lower. That earns you the right to use my name. My mouth was dry. This felt like stepping off a cliff. I don't think that's appropriate. Probably not. That almost smile again, dangerous and compelling. But I'm the king. I make the rules. Before I could respond, a bell chimed somewhere in the palace. A summons. His expression shuddered immediately, the vulnerable moment vanishing like it had never existed. I'm needed. He stepped back, formal once more. Commander Steele will brief you on security protocols. Anne Iris? The use of my first name sent a shiver down my spine. Yes, Your Highness. Thank you. For what you did for those children, for giving me a reason to look closer. His gaze held mine, heavy with something I couldn't name. Don't stop being who you are, even in this place, especially in this place. Then he was gone, striding out of the garden with that lethal grace, leaving me alone with the broken fountain and the weight of his words. I sat there for a long time, my hands trembling in my lap, trying to understand what had just happened. The Alpha King had thanked me, had asked me to call him by his name, had looked at me like I was something other than invisible, and I had no idea if that was a gift or a curse. As I finally stood to leave, I caught movement in an upper window, a figure watching. Female, elegant even from this distance. She turned away before I could see more, but I felt the weight of her attention like ice sliding down my spine. The palace, I was learning, had many eyes, and I had just become something worth watching. The dress arrived 2 days before the spring summit. I stared at it hanging in my small wardrobe, the fabric shimmering in the afternoon light filtering through my window. It was beautiful, a deep midnight blue that reminded me of the sky just before full dark, with delicate silver embroidery along the bodice that caught the light like stars. The cut was elegant but modest, nothing like the revealing gowns I'd seen courtiers wearing in the palace corridors. Mrs. Blackthorne had delivered it herself, her severe expression softening slightly when she saw my reaction. His Majesty selected it personally, she'd said, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from the sleeve. He has particular taste. The implication hung in the air between us. That the king choosing a dress for me meant something. I didn't want to examine what. Now, alone in my room, I reached out to touch the fabric. Silk, cool and weightless beneath my fingers. I'd never owned anything so fine. Growing up, my clothes had been second-hand, practical. After my mother died, I'd learned to make do with even less. This felt like a costume for a role I didn't know how to play. A sharp knock interrupted my thoughts. I opened the door to find a young Omega woman, perhaps a few years younger than my 23 years, with warm brown eyes and an infectious smile. Miss Hayden, I'm Elena Torres, one of the junior liaisons for the summit. She bobbed a slight curtsy. I've been assigned to help you prepare for the event. Protocol, etiquette, that sort of thing. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. I have no idea what I'm doing. Her smile widened. That's why I'm here. May I come in? Over the next hour, Elena transformed my confusion into something resembling confidence. She explained the summit's structure, the formal dinner the first night, followed by 3 days of negotiations, social gatherings, and political theater. She taught me the proper way to greet pack leaders, how to navigate conversations without accidentally insulting anyone's hierarchy, when to speak, and when to simply observe. The most important thing, she said, perched on my bed while I practiced a curtsy for the 10th time, is to remember that everyone there will be watching you. I froze mid-curtsy. Why? Elena's expression turned knowing. Because you're human, unmarked by any pack, and you arrived under the king's direct protection. The rumors are already flying. Some say you're his new political advisor. Others think you're being positioned as a potential... She trailed off, suddenly awkward. Potential what? She bit her lip. Potential mate. The word hit me like cold water. That's ridiculous. I barely know him. I'm human. I can't even bond properly with an alpha. Tell that to the court gossips. Elena shrugged. His Majesty has been unmated for 5 years since his coronation. Every eligible Omega in 3 kingdoms has been paraded before him. He's rejected them all, and now suddenly he brings in a human woman, gives her a position of influence, personally selects her wardrobe. She met my eyes. People are going to make assumptions. My stomach churned. I'm just here to help with the orphanage reforms. I know that. You know that. Elena stood, smoothing her skirt. But perception matters more than truth in this place. Just be careful, Miss Hayden. There are people who won't like you being here, who'll see you as a threat to their own ambitions. After she left, I sat on my bed, staring at the dress. What had I walked into? The night of the summit arrived too quickly. Commander Steele escorted me through the palace's grand corridors, her presence a silent reminder that the threats against me were real enough to warrant a permanent shadow. My dress rustled with each step, the sound foreign and unsettling. Elena had arranged my hair in an elegant twist, leaving a few pale strands loose to frame my face. I wore no jewelry. I owned none. But somehow the simplicity felt right. We reached the massive double doors of the grand ballroom. Through them, I could hear the murmur of voices, the clink of crystal, the subtle hum of power that came from gathering so many dominant beings in one space. Stay close to the king's table, Steele murmured. Don't wander. Don't accept drinks from anyone but palace staff. And if anyone makes you uncomfortable, find me immediately. You're really making this sound appealing, I muttered. The corner of her mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile I'd ever seen from her. You'll be fine. You're tougher than you look. The doors opened. The ballroom was magnificent, vaulted ceilings painted with celestial scenes, chandeliers dripping crystal light, walls lined with tapestries depicting pack history. Long tables formed a U-shape around a central dance floor, already filled with guests in formal attire. Alphas and their mates, pack representatives, foreign dignitaries. The air was thick with competing scents, everyone's natural pheromones mixing into something almost overwhelming for my human senses. Every eye turned toward me. The conversations didn't stop exactly, but they shifted, quieter, more pointed. I felt the weight of their attention like physical touch, assessing, judging. I lifted my chin and walked forward, refusing to shrink. The king's table was elevated on a dais at the head of the room. As I approached, I saw him. Demon, I reminded myself, though using his name even in my thoughts felt presumptuous. He stood speaking with an older alpha, but his gaze found me immediately, tracking my progress across the ballroom with that unnerving focus. He wore formal attire, black jacket with silver embroidery matching the royal crest. His dark hair swept back, emphasizing the sharp planes of his face. He looked every inch the powerful ruler, dangerous and untouchable, until he smiled. It was brief, just a slight curve of his mouth as I climbed the dais steps, but it transformed his entire face. Made him look younger, less burdened. Made my traitorous heart skip a beat. Miss Hayden. His voice carried that low rumble that I felt in my chest. You look well. Your Majesty. I performed the curtsy Elena had drilled into me, grateful when it came out smoothly. Please, sit. He gestured to the empty chair beside his. The position of honor, I realized with growing dread. Not just at his table, but directly beside him. The message couldn't have been clearer if he'd announced it with trumpets. I sat, hyper-aware of his proximity. He radiated heat, his scent, pine and smoke and that wild, indefinable thing, enveloping me. Under the table, His knee was inches from mine. "Relax," he murmured, leaning slightly toward me. To anyone watching, it might look like casual conversation. But I heard the command beneath. "You belong here." "I really don't." "I say you do. That's all that matters." Arrogant. But then, he was the king. Arrogance came with the crown. The dinner began. Course after course of exquisite food I barely tasted. Demon introduced me to various dignitaries who approached the table. Pack leaders from the southern territories, a delegation from the mountain clans, even a representative from the coastal kingdoms across the sea. I smiled, nodded, tried to remember names and titles that blurred together. Through it all, I felt the stares, particularly from one table slightly to the left. 3 women sat there, all stunning, all clearly high-ranking Omegas based on their elegant bearing and the deference shown by those around them. The one in the center, raven-haired with emerald eyes and a face that could launch ships, watched me with undisguised hostility. "Who is that?" I whispered to Demon during a lull. He followed my gaze, his expression hardening. "Lady Vivian Ashford, daughter of the Eastern Pack Alpha. She's been persistent in her interest." Translation. She wanted to be queen, and I was sitting in what she considered her rightful place. She looks like she wants to murder me. She'd have to go through me first. He said it casually, reaching for his wine glass, but there was steel beneath the words. Ignore her. She's irrelevant. Easy for him to say. He wasn't the human woman who'd apparently become a target. Midway through the main course, an older alpha approached, silver-haired, with scars crossing his weathered face, and eyes that had seen too much. He bowed slightly to Demon. "Your Majesty, might I request an introduction? Alpha Theodore Wren, of the Western Borders." Demon's tone was cordial but cautious. "This is Miss Iris Hayden, consultant to the Crown's child welfare reforms." Theodore's bushy eyebrows rose. "Ah, the young woman who exposed the orphanage scandal. I've heard much about your work, Miss Hayden." "Thank you, Alpha Wren. Please, call me Theo. Formality makes my old bones ache." He smiled, transforming his harsh features into something grandfatherly. "I wanted to thank you personally. My pack operates 2 of the facilities under review. We had no idea conditions had deteriorated so badly. Your testimony has been invaluable." Warmth spread through my chest, genuine appreciation, no political undertones. "I only reported what I saw." "Many wouldn't have." He glanced at Demon. "You've chosen your allies well, Your Majesty." After he left, I felt marginally better. At least not everyone here viewed me as an interloper. The dinner concluded, and servants cleared the tables to open the floor for dancing. A string quartet began playing, something classical and elegant. Demon stood, extending his hand to me. "I don't dance," I said quickly. "Neither do I, but tradition demands the king open the floor." His eyes held a glint of amusement. "Unless you'd prefer I ask Lady Vivian." The thought of that woman in his arms, smiling triumphantly, made something ugly twist in my stomach. "Fine. But don't blame me when I step on your feet." His hand engulfed mine, warm and calloused, as he led me to the center of the floor. The room fell silent, everyone watching. He placed his other hand on my waist, drawing me closer than was probably proper. "Follow my lead," he murmured. The music swelled and we moved. He was surprisingly graceful for such a large man, guiding me through the steps with patient precision. I stumbled twice, but he steadied me each time, his grip firm and reassuring. After a few moments, I stopped thinking about the steps and just let him lead. "You're doing well," he said quietly. "I'm terrified. I know. But you don't show it." His gray eyes found mine. "That's a valuable skill here. Never let them see your fear." "Is that how you survive? Pretending you're not afraid?" Something flickered in his expression. "I'm the Alpha King. I'm not allowed to be afraid. Everyone's afraid of something." His hand tightened on my waist. "What are you afraid of, Iris?" The use of my name in public felt intimate, dangerous. "Right now? That I'll trip and humiliate us both. That's not what I meant." No, it wasn't. But the real answer, that I was afraid of becoming too visible, too important, too entangled in something I didn't understand. Felt too raw to speak aloud. "What are you afraid of?" I countered. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, failing them. All of them. The children in those orphanages, the packs depending on my leadership, the kingdom itself. His voice dropped lower, becoming the kind of ruler who's too focused on power to see the suffering right in front of him. The vulnerability in his words stole my breath. This wasn't the Alpha King speaking. This was just Demon, a man carrying impossible weight. "You're not that," I said softly. "You came when you heard. You acted. That's what matters." His eyes searched mine, and the air between us shifted, charged, heavy with something I didn't want to name. The ballroom, the watching crowd, the political games. All of it faded until there was only us, moving together in this small pocket of space. The song ended. Applause rippled through the room. Demon stepped back, his expression shuddering. "Thank you for the dance, Miss Hayden." The formality felt like a door closing. I curtsied, throat tight, and let him escort me back to the table. But as I sat down, I caught sight of Lady Vivian across the room. She was no longer watching me with hostility. She was watching me with calculation. And somehow, that was infinitely more frightening. The rest of the evening blurred past in a haze of small talk and careful navigation. When Commander Steele finally escorted me back to my quarters well past midnight, my feet ached, and my mind spun with everything I'd witnessed. I'd survived my first summit event. But I had the distinct feeling that the real test was still to come. The attack came on the third morning of the summit. I'd been reviewing reports in one of the palace's smaller libraries, a quiet room tucked away from the main corridors where the scent of old leather and paper provided comfort. Elena sat across from me, helping organize testimonies from children we'd interviewed at various facilities. Commander Steele stood by the door, alert as always. The explosion shattered the morning calm. The building shook, books tumbling from shelves, dust raining from the ceiling. My ears rang, the world muffled and distant. Through the ringing, I heard screaming, raw and terrified. Steele had her weapon drawn instantly, moving to the window. "Stay down!" she barked. I grabbed Elena, pulling her beneath the heavy oak table as another explosion rattled the walls. Closer this time. My heart hammered against my ribs, every instinct screaming danger. "What's happening?" Elena's voice was small, frightened. So young, I realized. She couldn't be more than 20. I don't know. Just stay quiet. Through the window, I could see smoke rising from the east wing, the guest quarters where visiting dignitaries were housed. Alarms blared throughout the palace. Footsteps thundered in the corridors, guards mobilizing. Steele spoke rapidly into her communication device. "Library, East Tower, 2 civilians, requesting immediate evacuation." She listened, her expression growing grimmer. "Understood." Moving to secondary position, she turned to us. "Insurgents breached the outer walls. They're targeting summit attendees. We need to move. Now." We emerged from beneath the table, Elena clutching my hand. Steele led us into the corridor, weapon raised. The palace had transformed into something from a nightmare. Smoke billowing through hallways, guards rushing past, the acrid smell of explosives burning my throat. "How did they get past security?" I managed to ask. "Someone let them in." Steele's voice was flat, deadly. "This was coordinated. We rounded a corner and nearly collided with a group of guards escorting terrified summit guests toward the safe rooms. I recognized Alpha Theodore among them, his grandfatherly warmth replaced by warrior alertness despite his age. "Miss Hayden," he broke from the group. "Thank the gods. Is the king—" "Leading the defense," Steele interrupted. "He's engaging the insurgents at the south gate." My stomach dropped. Of course he was. He wouldn't hide while his people were under attack. Another explosion, this one making the floor buckle beneath our feet. Steele cursed. That was the main stairwell. "We can't reach the safe rooms." She scanned the corridor, calculating. "The old servants' passages, this way." She guided us through a hidden door I'd never noticed, into narrow passages lit only by emergency lighting. The walls pressed close, the air stale. Elena whimpered, and I squeezed her hand. "We're going to be fine," I told her, with more confidence than I felt. We emerged into a storage cellar beneath the palace kitchens. The sounds of battle were muffled here, but still present. Gunfire, shouting, the clash of close combat. Steele positioned us behind stacked supply crates. "Wait here. I need to secure the perimeter. Don't leave us," Elena pleaded. "I'll be right outside that door. You're safe." Steele's eyes found mine. Keep her calm. Keep quiet. If anyone but me comes through that door, hide. Then she was gone. The minutes crawled past. Elena trembled beside me, and I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, murmuring reassurances I wasn't sure I believed. Above us, the battle continued. Each explosion made her flinch, made my own fear spike higher. I thought of Demon. Was he hurt? Fighting? The image of him wounded, bleeding, made something in my chest constrict painfully. When had I started caring so much? The door burst open. Not Steele. 3 men, armed, wearing masks, insurgents. My blood turned to ice. "There," one pointed at us. "The human, that's her." They were here for me. I pushed Elena behind me, backing toward the far wall. "Run," I whispered to her. "There's a ventilation shaft behind those shelves. Go. I can't leave you. Go." She ran. The men started after her, but I grabbed a wooden crate, hurling it with all my strength. It struck one in the shoulder, barely slowed him, but it got their attention. "The girl doesn't matter," the leader said. "We only need the human, alive." That word, alive, terrified me more than if they'd wanted me dead. Alive meant leverage, hostage, something worse. They advanced. I had no weapons, no training, no chance. But I wouldn't make it easy. I grabbed anything within reach, jars of preserved food, cooking implements, anything that might buy seconds. I threw, dodged, kept moving. One man lunged, and I drove my knee upward like I'd seen palace guards practice in the courtyard. He grunted, stumbling back. But there were 3 of them, and 1 of me. Hands grabbed my arms, yanking them behind my back. I screamed, thrashing. Something sharp pricked my neck. A needle, sedative. The world started to blur at the edges. Then the door exploded inward. Demon filled the doorway, and he was terrifying. Blood streaked his face, his formal clothes torn and stained. But it was his eyes, pure alpha fury, inhuman and absolute, that made my captors freeze. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Let her go. Each word was a separate sentence, dripping with lethal promise. The man holding me hesitated. Fatal mistake. Demon moved like liquid violence. I'd never seen anything so fast, so brutal. He caught the first insurgent by the throat, slamming him into the wall with enough force to crack stone. The second pulled a weapon, but Demon was already there, disarming him with a motion too quick to follow, then driving his fist into the man's face with a sickening crunch. The third, the one holding me, pressed something cold against my temple. A gun. "Stay back or I shoot." Demon froze. His chest heaved, blood dripping from his knuckles, his eyes locked on the weapon at my head. For a moment, I saw something I'd never expected to see in the Alpha King. Pure, visceral fear. "You don't want to do that," Demon said, his voice deadly calm now. "Pull that trigger, and you'll pray for death before I'm done with you." "She's worth more than my life anyway." The man's hand trembled against me. The humans wanted to send a message. That your protection means nothing. That you can't save them all. Humans. The insurgents were human, my own kind. "Let her go," Demon repeated. "And I'll grant you a quick end. That's more mercy than you deserve." "Mercy from a monster?" The man laughed, unhinged. "Your kind has ruled long enough, kept us beneath you, told us we were lesser." In his distraction, his grip loosened, just slightly. I drove my elbow backward into his ribs with everything I had. The gun discharged, deafening in the enclosed space, but the bullet went wide. Demon was on him before I could blink, ripping the man away from me with such force I heard bones break. The insurgent crumpled, unconscious or dead. I couldn't tell. Didn't care. Demon's hands were on me, turning me, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they—" His voice cracked, raw with something beyond anger. "I'm okay." The sedative didn't. I'm okay. His hands framed my face, forcing me to look at him. Blood spattered his features, his gray eyes wild and searching. You're sure? I nodded, and something in him seemed to break. He pulled me against his chest, one hand cradling the back of my head, the other wrapped around my waist like he could physically hold me together. I felt his heart pounding, felt the tremor in his strong frame. The Alpha King, shaking. I thought... He couldn't finish the sentence. I'm here. I whispered into his chest. I'm okay. We stood like that for a moment that felt suspended outside time. Then the world rushed back, the smell of gunpowder, the groans of injured men, footsteps approaching. Steel burst through the door, weapon raised, followed by half a dozen guards. She took in the scene, the unconscious insurgents, Demon holding me, and something like relief crossed her stern features. Your Majesty, the palace is secure. We've captured 12 insurgents total, 3 casualties among the guards, none among the summit guests. Demon didn't let me go. Elena Torres? Safe. She reached the ventilation system and alerted guards to Miss Hayden's position. Steele's gaze flickered to me. You did well, getting her out. I hadn't done anything but survive. But I nodded anyway. Take these 3 to the dungeons, Demon ordered, his voice returning to that cold authority. I want to know everything. Who sent them? How they got past security? Who helped from the inside? Yes, Your Majesty. Finally, reluctantly, Demon released me. But he kept one hand on my arm, as if afraid I might disappear. Medical team. Now. I want her checked for injuries, drug exposure, everything. I'm fine, really. That wasn't a request. His eyes met mine, and I saw the fear still lingering there, barely contained beneath the royal mask. Please, Iris, let them examine you. The please undid me. I nodded. The medical examination revealed nothing serious. Some bruising, elevated stress hormones, but the sedative hadn't taken full effect. The doctor declared me physically sound and prescribed rest, as if I could sleep after that. Instead, I found myself in Demon's private study hours later. He'd summoned me after the emergency council meeting, after dealing with the aftermath and interrogating prisoners. Now he sat behind his massive desk, looking exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. The insurgents were from a human supremacist group, he said without preamble. They've been operating in secret for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. The summit provided the perfect target. Maximum chaos, maximum message. They were after me specifically. Yes. His jaw tightened. Because you represent something they hate. A human choosing to work with pack society rather than against it. They called you a traitor to your kind. The word stung more than it should have. Maybe they're right. They're fanatics. He stood, moving around the desk to stand before me. And you're nothing like them. You don't see humans and packs as enemies. You see people, suffering, struggling, needing help. That's not betrayal. That's wisdom. They wanted to kill me to send you a message. They wanted to take you, use you as leverage, his hands clenched at his sides. I would have given them anything, everything, to get you back safely. The admission hung between us, heavy with implications. You can't say things like that, I whispered. Why not? Because you're the king. You don't make those kinds of compromises for someone like me. Someone like you. He stepped closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Someone brave enough to feed hungry children with their last coin. Someone who threw herself between armed insurgents and a frightened girl. Someone who makes me question every decision, every priority, every wall I've built around myself. My breath caught. Demon, when I saw that gun to your head, I realized something. His voice dropped lower, intimate. I realized that my greatest fear isn't failing as a king. It's losing you before I ever truly had you. You don't have me, don't I? His hand rose, fingers grazing my cheek with devastating gentleness. Then why does your heart race when I'm near? Why do you watch me when you think I'm not looking? Why did you lean into me during that dance like you belonged there? Because I was falling. because despite every logical reason not to, despite the impossibility of it all, I was falling for the Alpha King. "This can't work," I said, even as I leaned into his touch. "I'm human. You need a proper mate, someone who can bond with you, give you heirs, unite packs. I need you." His forehead pressed against mine, his breath warm on my lips. "I don't care about proper. I care about you. The council will never accept I am the king. I don't need their acceptance." His lips brushed mine, questioning. I should have pulled away. Instead, I rose on my toes and closed the distance. The kiss was gentle at first, exploring. Then something ignited, all the tension, the fear, the desperate relief of survival. His arms banded around me, lifting me off the floor as the kiss deepened. I tangled my fingers in his dark hair, tasting blood and smoke and him. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes held a question. I answered by kissing him again. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over the palace, and everything had changed. The weeks following the attack transformed the palace into something between a fortress and a battleground. Security tripled. Every guest, every servant, every delivery was scrutinized. The insurgents' interrogations revealed a network larger than anyone had suspected, cells operating in 6 major cities, funded by wealthy humans who resented pack dominance. The leaders were arrested, but the ideology remained, festering beneath the surface. And I had become its symbol, the human woman who chose the other side. The death threats arrived daily now. Letters slipped under my door, messages left in places only palace staff could access. Some were crude, violent fantasies. Others were almost sorrowful, begging me to see reason, to abandon the monsters and return to my own kind. Demon wanted to increase my security further. I refused. I wouldn't live in a cage, wouldn't let fear dictate every movement. We compromised. Steel remained my constant shadow, and I agreed not to leave the palace grounds without armed escort. It chafed, but I understood the necessity. What I struggled with was everything else that had shifted. After that kiss, after that confession in his study, Demon and I had fallen into something I couldn't quite name. Not a formal courtship. That would have required public announcements, council approval, elaborate rituals. Instead, we existed in stolen moments, late-night conversations in his study while we both pretended to work. Early morning walks through the gardens before the palace woke, his hand finding mine beneath the table during council meetings, hidden from view but anchoring us both. It was beautiful, and terrifying, and entirely impossible. "You're distracted again." I blinked, refocusing on Elena across the desk. We were in my office now, a small room Demon had insisted I needed, filled with files on the orphanage reforms. 3 months had passed since the summit attack. 3 months of testimonies, policy changes, facility inspections. The work was grinding, but essential. "Sorry, what were you saying?" Elena's knowing smile irritated me. She'd figured out something was happening between Demon and me, though I'd never confirmed it. Palace gossip did the rest. I was saying that the northern facility inspection is scheduled for next week. Alpha Theodore specifically requested you attend. He wants your input on the new dormitory designs. Theo had become an unexpected ally. His genuine care for the children in his territory's facilities had earned my respect. He was also one of the few pack leaders who didn't treat me like a curiosity or a threat. "I'll be there. What else?" "The council meeting tomorrow. They're voting on the funding reallocation proposal." Elena's expression turned serious. "There's going to be opposition. Several members still think the current system is adequate. Of course they do. Because they're not the ones sleeping 20 to a room." I rubbed my temples, feeling the familiar headache building. "Do we have the votes?" "Maybe. If the king pushes hard enough, which he would." Demon had become ruthless about the reforms, wielding his authority like a blade against anyone who tried to obstruct progress. Some called it admirable. Others whispered that the human woman had too much influence over their king. They weren't entirely wrong. A knock at the door. Steele entered without waiting for permission. Her way. "Miss Hayden, you have a visitor. I'm not scheduled for any—" She insisted it was urgent. Something in Steele's tone put me on alert. Lady Vivian Ashford. My stomach clenched. The Omega who'd watched me with such calculation during the summit had avoided me completely in the months since. Now she wanted to talk? Should I stay? Elena asked quietly. No, it's fine. You can go. I stood, smoothing my simple dress. Nothing like the elegant gowns Vivian wore, but I'd stopped trying to compete. Send her in, Commander. Vivian Ashford entered like she owned the space. Raven hair swept into an intricate style, emerald dress that probably cost more than I made in a year, and that face, beautiful and cold as winter ice. Her scent was overwhelming, the carefully cultivated perfume of a high-ranking Omega designed to attract an entrance. I remained standing behind my desk, keeping it between us. Lady Ashford, what can I do for you? Miss Hayden. She didn't sit, didn't pretend this was a social call. I'll be direct. You need to leave the palace. Excuse me? Leave. Return to whatever human settlement will take you. Disappear. Her emerald eyes were hard. Before you destroy everything. Anger sparked, hot and immediate. I'm not destroying anything. I'm helping reform a broken system. You're destabilizing the kingdom. She moved closer, predatory grace in every step. Do you have any idea what's happening out there? The human supremacist groups are gaining members by the thousands. They point to you as proof that humans can never integrate with pack society, that we'll always choose our own kind over them. I'm not choosing sides. I'm choosing children who need help. And sleeping with the king while you do it? The words hung in the air like poison. I kept my expression neutral. That's none of your concern. It's everyone's concern, for the first time. Real emotion cracked through her icy facade. He's unmated, has been for 5 years, rejecting every suitable Omega because none of us were good enough, pure enough, whatever impossible standard he held. Her hands clenched at her sides, and then you show up, human, powerless, unable to even bond properly, and suddenly he's ready to throw away centuries of tradition. I never asked for any of this, but you're taking it anyway. She leaned forward, voice dropping to something almost pleading. Listen to me. I don't hate you. I actually respect what you're trying to do for those children. But this path you're on, it ends in blood. His blood, your blood. The blood of everyone caught between human and pack when the real war starts. You're being dramatic. Am I? She pulled out her phone, tapping the screen before turning it to face me. News articles, videos, social media posts, all showing protests, riots, violence, humans attacking pack members retaliating, buildings burning, bodies in the streets. My blood turned cold. This has escalated in just 3 months. Vivian said quietly. Since the summit attack, since word spread about the king's interest in you. Both sides are preparing for war, Iris. And you're the spark that's going to ignite it. I couldn't breathe. Those images, that violence. Because of me? What do you want me to do? Leave. Quietly, I'll help you relocate somewhere safe, provide funds, ensure you're protected. The king will be angry, but he'll move on eventually. Find a proper mate, unite the packs, strengthen our position before the real conflict begins. Her eyes held something like compassion. You care about him. I can see it. So give him what he needs. Stability. Not a doomed romance that will tear the kingdom apart. Every word was logical, reasonable, and it made me want to scream. Get out. Iris, get out of my office. Now. Vivian studied me for a long moment, then sighed. I tried. Remember that, when everything falls apart. I tried to give you an exit. She left, her perfume lingering like a threat. I sank into my chair, hands shaking. The images on her phone had burned into my mind. Was she right? Was I being selfish, clinging to something beautiful while the world burned? I thought of Demon's smile, rare and genuine, his hands gentle on my face. The way he listened when I talked about the children, really listened. Like my words mattered more than any council decree. I thought of Thomas and all the others like him. The forgotten, the abandoned. The ones who needed someone to fight for them. And I thought of my mother's words, spoken when I was 12, and still believed the world could be kind. Kindness isn't weakness, Iris. It's the hardest kind of strength. Maybe courage wasn't weakness either. I found Demon in the training yard, working through sword forms with an intensity that spoke of stress. His shirt was soaked with sweat, muscles moving beneath fabric as he flowed through the ancient patterns. Several guards practiced nearby, but they gave their king space. He saw me and stopped immediately, concern flashing across his face. "Iris? What's wrong?" "We need to talk." He sheathed his sword, grabbing a towel. "My study?" "No, here is fine." I needed space, air, distance to think clearly. Vivian came to see me. His expression darkened. What did she say? I told him everything. The warnings, the news articles, her offer to help me disappear. He listened without interrupting, his jaw growing tighter with each word. "She's not entirely wrong," I finished quietly. "The violence is escalating. People are dying. And I'm part of the reason. You're not responsible for fanatics and their choices. But I am a symbol." "She's right about that." I wrapped my arms around myself. "Maybe it would be better if I left. Let things calm down. Let you find a proper mate who can unite." "No." The word was absolute, leaving no room for argument. "You're not leaving. And I'm not finding another mate. Demon, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable." He closed the distance between us, hands gripping my shoulders. "You want to know what I learned from my father before he died? That a king who rules based on fear of what might happen is already defeated. That sometimes you have to stand for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it costs everything. This could cost you your kingdom. Then it costs me my kingdom." His gray eyes burned with conviction. "But I won't sacrifice you to appease people who'll never be satisfied. The human supremacists don't hate you because of me. They hate what you represent. A world where humans and packs cooperate instead of compete, where children matter more than politics." His hands gentled, thumbs brushing my shoulders. "They'd hate that with or without our relationship. And the packs? The ones who think I'm unsuitable? Will learn to live with it, or leave." He smiled, fierce and beautiful. "I've spent 5 years trying to be the perfect king, unmated, unburdened, making every decision based on political calculation. And I was miserable. Effective, maybe, but hollow." His forehead touched mine. "You make me remember why I wanted this crown in the first place. To protect people, to make things better, to matter beyond just power and tradition." Tears burned my eyes. "I'm scared." "Good. So am I." He pulled back just enough to meet my gaze. "But I'm more scared of losing you, of living the rest of my life wondering what could have been if I'd been brave enough to choose you. This won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is." I kissed him then, in full view of the training guards, letting anyone who cared to look see exactly what we were to each other. Damn the consequences. When we broke apart, I saw several guards smiling. One even offered a respectful nod. Maybe not everyone would hate this after all. The council meeting the next day was brutal. The funding reallocation proposal passed, but barely. 3 members walked out in protest, claiming the king was being manipulated by human interests. Another demanded my removal from any official capacity. Demon shut that down with 3 words. "She stays. Move on." The tension in the room could have been cut with a knife, but we won. The orphanages would get proper funding, oversight, care. Children like Tomas would have enough food, clean beds, a chance at something better. That night, Demon took me to the South Garden, our place now. The broken fountain still trickled water through its cracks, the ancient willows still swayed in the breeze. We sat on the stone bench where he'd first asked me to work for him, months ago, when everything was simpler. "The northern facility inspection next week," he said. "I'm coming with you." "You don't need to. I want to." His hand found mine, fingers interlacing. "I want to see what you've built, what we're fighting for. It's going to take years, maybe decades, to fix everything that's broken. Then we have years, decades." He lifted my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles with devastating gentleness. "I'm not going anywhere, Iris. Neither are you." I leaned against his shoulder, breathing in his scent, letting myself believe it might actually be possible. The kingdom might burn, the humans might riot, the packs might rebel, but we would face it together. 3 years later, on a cool autumn morning, I stood in the northern facility's new wing and watched children laugh in a clean, warm dormitory. Tomas, now 8 and thriving, helped a younger child with their reading. Alpha Theodore beamed beside me, proud of what his pack had built. Demon's hand found the small of my back, a familiar touch that still made my pulse quicken. "You did this," he murmured. "We did this," I corrected. The reforms had spread across all territories. The violence had continued. There was no pretending otherwise, but something else had grown alongside it. Small pockets of cooperation. Humans and pack members working together, seeing each other as people rather than enemies. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't finished. But it was better. That night, in Demon's chambers, our chambers now, he pulled a small box from his desk drawer. "I had this made," he said, opening it to reveal a ring. Simple silver, no jewels, but engraved with words in the old language. "It means she who leads with courage." My throat tightened. "Demon, I know you can't bond like an Omega. I know the Council still fights me on half my decisions. I know there are people who'll never accept this." He took the ring out, holding it between us. "But I love you, Iris Hayden, and I want you beside me, not as some unofficial consultant or secret lover, but as my partner, my queen, if you'll have me." Through the window, I could see the palace grounds where children now played. Children from the reformed orphanages, visiting with their new families, proof that impossible things could happen. I thought of that frightened girl in a cold kitchen, feeding a hungry child with her last coin. I thought of my mother's words about kindness and strength, and I thought of the man before me, who'd seen past everything I wasn't to everything I was. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto my finger, then kissed me with all the fierce joy of someone who'd stopped pretending he didn't need anyone. Outside, the world continued its slow, painful transformation. Humans and packs learning to coexist. One difficult day at a time. Inside, in the arms of the Alpha King, I finally understood what my mother had meant. Kindness wasn't weakness. Love wasn't foolish. Hope wasn't naive. They were the hardest kind of strength, the kind that changed everything, and we would wield them together for all the children who deserved better, for all the people searching for a different way forward, for ourselves, and the impossible future we were brave enough to build. The story didn't end there. It never really ended, but it transformed, from a tale of survival into one of defiance, from invisibility into undeniable presence, from a cold kitchen into a kingdom where even the forgotten could matter. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.